Hey co-reporters, and welcome back to my channel. I've been watching this latest season of the Real Housewives of Potomac and couldn't help but wonder why it's become such a vicious show.
Oh, hell no.
There's a level of toxicity to it that isn't present in other cities, and when reading other people's takes on the show, I found a comment on TikTok that simply stated that RHOP is anti-black.
That's racist.
And it finally hit me that that was the underlying issue lurking insidiously in the shadows of every single season.
That's just not right. That's messed up.
Throughout this video, we're going to be talking about the instances of anti-blackness that I've seen throughout my years of watching the show, but I also encourage you to share your own perspectives in the comment section in case I miss anything, as I do unfortunately have some blind spots because I'm not African American. I'm African, I'm Canadian, and now I live in France, but I'm not African American. So there are some aspects and nuances to African American culture and dynamics that I might unfortunately miss out on. Now, let's get into it. The Real Housewives of Potomac is a spin-off of the popular Real Housewives franchise that debuted in 2016 and has since become a groundbreaking addition to the reality television landscape. The show features a predominantly Black cast of affluent women living in the upscale suburbs of Potomac, Maryland. The show is significant to the franchise for a variety of reasons, such as the fact that it's only the second Real Housewives city to have a predominantly Black cast. We are introduced to white-passing, multi-generational Black people like Robin Dixon, and we even got to see the interesting political and social dynamics in the Potomac area for a good period of time through Sharice Jackson, whose children are friends with former US President Barack Obama's children. Potomac only has a 1% Black population, so it's rather special that the minority was given complete representation of the area. In addition to being a hit with the public, RHOP has also been critically acclaimed over the years. Variety magazine has praised the show for its sharp social commentary and its well-rounded cast of characters. Vulture has called the show one of the most compelling installments in the Real Housewives franchise, and The Hollywood Reporter has said that it is one of the most watched and critically acclaimed shows on Bravo. Despite all of the show's success, both critical and commercial, there has always been a sinister theme running in the background that seems to have come to a boiling point now that we're on the 8th season. And that theme is anti-blackness. Anti-blackness refers to the systemic and ingrained prejudice, discrimination, and hostility directed towards individuals who are identified as Black or of African descent. It encompasses both overt and covert forms of racism, and it can manifest in various aspects of society, including institutions, policies, cultural representations, and interpersonal interactions. Obviously, the Real Housewives of Potomac falls under cultural representations. So although we will be discussing anti-blackness perpetuated on an individual level by these women on the show, there's also that cultural representation aspect that Bravo is responsible for as a network by even showing this. Anti-blackness is present throughout RHOP from its inception in season 1, where cast members would derogatorily refer to Black assistants and housekeepers as the help, a term that was used to refer to Black domestic workers in the 1960s, which inspired an eponymous film released in 2011 starring Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer, where we saw how brutal the racism that these maids faced during their tenure. Biracial cast members Katie Ross and Ashley Darby were actually the first housewives to call out symptoms of anti-blackness on the show in season 1. Giselle Bryant, a light-skinned woman with green eyes and processed blonde hair, consistently made snide remarks about her fellow multiracial co-star Ashley Darby's afro, referring to it as a big, wild bush. Ashley didn't take the disrespectful comments lying down and instead decided to publish a scathing post on her Bravo blog, calling Giselle out for the anti-blackness apparent in her choice of hair color and disparaging way of referencing afro hair. She said, and I quote, "I feel like Giselle decided to backtrack after being called out on her She makes a great deal of effort to make herself look more European, including straightening her hair and dyeing it blonde. Sure, everyone's entitled to look the way they want, but it's completely wrong to mock others' choices. It took me quite some time to get comfortable with my curls, especially when I made the leap 2 years ago. I was worried my husband would look at me differently, as I would not have the same appearance as when he met me 4 years prior. But I was preaching to other people about being true to themselves while I wasn't living my own truth. Now I am incredibly proud of my natural hair and rock it all the time. Women like Giselle, who reference themselves in third person and take a million selfies, need to go on a journey of self-love and get comfortable with a lifelong vehicle they've been given to drive. In the case of Katie Ross, she took Giselle Bryant and Robin Dixon to task for obsessively questioning her racial identity, accusing her of not being black enough, and suggesting that she wore a, quote, Jackson 5 afro to deflect from not being black enough in season 1.
Katie, yes. I feel like we need to have a Black history lesson.
Oh my goodness. Are you seriously going to bring this up again?
I am going to bring this up.
Okay. You bring up race all the time. It's stupid. It's offensive to me that you think that I'm not a black woman. I'm not just African American. I'm also Caucasian. I'm biracial. What the hell is wrong with that? I'm really surprised that they're so obsessed with skin color and racial identity. I feel like every single time I do or say anything, it's like, Katie, you're not being black enough. Or Katie, how black are you feeling today?
While allegations of not being black enough and veiled insults against black domestic workers were rife in the first 2 seasons of the show, the addition of Candace Dillard in season 3 brought along more blatant forms of anti-blackness and straight-up slurs against black women.
You gonna drag me? You gonna drag me too? Do you want me to? Do you want me to drag me? Do you want me to? Do you want me to? Do you want me to? Hey, 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 hey,
Candace famously referred to Ashley Darby as a bedwench on numerous occasions, including when Ashley was giving birth to her first child, Dean, fathered by her disgraced Caucasian husband, Michael Darby. The term bedwench historically refers to a woman, often an enslaved African woman, who was forced or coerced into an actual relationship with a slave owner or a person in power, typically a white man. This term has its roots in the context of slavery in the United States, where relationship between enslaved individuals and those who held power were complex and often exploitative. The use of the term reflects the oppressive and dehumanizing nature of slavery, where individuals had little agency or control over their lives and relationships. Using this term to refer to modern-day interracial relationships and to imply that enslaved women were having consensual acts with their slave masters for financial gain as an insult against Ashley Darby is cruel, inaccurate, and disgusting. And quite ironic as well, considering Candace herself is also married to a white man. Candace has also famously referred to Ashley Darby as a roach, and Ashley herself has referred to Candace as a hamster. Comparing individuals, particularly black women, to animals is a deeply rooted and historical form of racism. Throughout history, various racist ideologies and stereotypes have dehumanized and marginalized people of African descent. Comparing black women to animals was a way to reinforce these dehumanizing stereotypes and justify discriminatory practices such as slavery, segregation, and systemic racism. During periods of slavery, racist ideologies were used to justify the enslavement of African people. Dehumanizing language, including comparisons to animals, served to portray black individuals as inferior intellectually and morally, reinforcing the notion that they were not fully human. This dehumanization made it easier for people in positions of power to justify acts of violence, exploitation, and discrimination against African Americans. And within this perpetuation of racist comparison, the animals that black people were most typically compared to were, number one, monkeys and apes. Comparing black individuals to monkeys or apes was a prevalent and particularly degrading stereotype. This comparison sought to suggest that people of African descent were less evolved or less intelligent than other races. Number two, exotic and wild animals. Black women in particular were often compared to exotic or wild animals, reinforcing stereotypes that depicted us as untamed, hypersexual, or dangerous. Such comparisons aim to justify the subjugation and control of black women. And last but not least, insects and vermin. Some racist ideologies likened Black individuals to insects or vermin, portraying them as pests or nuisances. This dehumanization contributed to justifying discriminatory practices and segregation. In season 5 of The Real Housewives of Potomac, things took a very violent turn when Monique Samuels viciously beat Candace Dillard after an explosive argument in which Candace challenged Monique to drag her several times. Upon getting dragged, Candace instantly started using racist language against her Black co-star.
Get the hood rat ass bitch out of here. The hood rat came out because you're a ghetto ass, hood ass bitch. Get her ass. And you know how to act.
Referring to Black women as hood rats or using terms such as ghetto in a derogatory manner is considered racially insensitive and perpetuates negative stereotypes about Black women. The language is quite obviously offensive and contributes to the dehumanization of individuals based on their race and socioeconomic background, which we've seen people kind of make snide remarks to Monique about because she wasn't raised in the lap of luxury like Candace was. The terms ghetto and hood rat have historically been used to stereotype and stigmatize Black people living in urban, often economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. Applying these terms specifically to Black women reinforces harmful stereotypes and implies a judgment about their character or worth based on where they live or their racial background. Though Candace Dillard uses the most blatantly anti-Black language on RHOP, she's not the only one who uses anti-Black language. Sharice Jackson famously quipped about not frequenting the ghetto when her co-stars Karen Huger and Giselle Bryant argued in her home in season 1. RHOP's already troubled racial dynamics were introduced to a new layer of anti-Blackness when African housewives Wendy Osefo and Nneka Ihim were added to the show. The two women hail from Nigeria and both are the most educated women in the group, but that didn't stop Nneka from spreading ignorant, xenophobic propaganda against Wendy Osefo and her family on the show. Ashley Darby, the lead ish disturber of Real Housewives of Potomac, sat down with Nneka and brought up malicious and fictitious articles from years ago accusing Wendy of being OSU. Nneka explained to Ashley the history of the OSU people, but never accused Wendy of being one. However, in true sinister fashion, Ashley chose to misrepresent their conversation to cause discord between the women based on cultural trauma she knows nothing about and had no business meddling in. The OSU people, also known as the OSU caste system, are associated with the Igbo ethnic group in Nigeria. The term OSU refers to a group of people who historically were considered outcasts or untouchables within certain Igbo communities. The caste system is a social hierarchy that has been widely criticized and condemned for perpetuating discrimination and inequality. In traditional Igbo society, the OSU caste system was characterized by a division between those designated as freeborn and the OSU, who were seen as having taboo or untouchable status. This division was often based on factors such as lineage, ancestry, or even perceived spiritual considerations. The OSU were subjected to various forms of social discrimination, exclusion, and restrictions. They were often barred from participating in certain religious or social activities and faced challenges in marriage and other communal activities and interactions. Over the years, efforts have been made to eradicate the OSU caste system and promote social equality within Igbo communities. So, with that being said, accusing somebody of being OSU based solely on their ancestry or perceived background can contribute to discrimination against them. By misrepresenting her conversation with Nneka, Ashley Darby purposely sought to use Nneka and Wendy's shared Nigerian heritage as a point of contention between the two of them while stigmatizing Wendy. Her allegations were not only harmful to Wendy and her family, they were harmful to the OSU people and perpetuate the narrative that they are social lepers that must be shunned at all costs. Unfortunately, Ashley's scheme worked to divide the Nigerian cast members and lead to Nneka using her newfound platform to attempt to outcast Wendy and peddle propaganda against an ancient African religion. Voodoo is a religion with roots in West Africa that has developed and evolved in various forms in different parts of the world, particularly in Haiti and some other Caribbean countries. It's a syncretic faith, meaning it combines elements of various religious traditions, including indigenous African beliefs, elements of Roman Catholicism, and indigenous Caribbean spiritual practices. Voodoo is often misunderstood and mischaracterized due to sensationalized portrayals in pop culture. It's important to note that Voodoo is a diverse and complex belief system with a rich cultural heritage. The religion involves the worship of a supreme deity, various spirits, and ancestors. Practitioners may participate in ceremonies, rituals, and dances to connect with the spiritual realm and seek guidance or assistance. Just so we're clear here, there is nothing inherently evil about Voodoo, and the stigmatization of Voodoo is deeply rooted in racism and colonial history. The negative perceptions and biases surrounding Voodoo have historical ties to the transatlantic slave trade and European colonialism, where the cultural and religious practices of African slaves were often suppressed, demonized, and distorted. During slavery, European colonizers sought to undermine the cultural identity and practices of enslaved Africans, including their religious beliefs. The demonization of Voodoo and other African spiritual traditions served the interests of slave owners by justifying the brutal treatment of slaves and portraying their native cultures as inferior or evil. These negative stereotypes persisted over time and affect the way that Voodoo is viewed even to this day. So in accusing Wendy Osefo of being part of an outcasted tribe and accusing Wendy's mother of trying to do her harm through a voodoo shrine, Nneka went to extreme measures to be as ignorant and as culturally irresponsible as possible, and contributed an immeasurable amount of harm to the public perception of Nigerian people. Now listen. A deep dive into the Real Housewives of Potomac can never be complete without a foray into its history with colorism. The light-skinned members of the show have been accused of perpetuating colorism for several years now. Light-skinned cast member Robin Dixon has been quite aggressive over the years, even threatening violence on multiple occasions, yet she has managed to skirt by without any consequences or attacks against her character. Wendy Osefo, a darker-skinned cast member, famously had a drink thrown in her face by light-skinned Mia Thornton in the middle of a heated discussion, yet was supported by Giselle and Robin in her act of violence due to their shared hatred of Wendy Osefo. Meanwhile, those same women had a meltdown when Monique got violent with Candace, with Giselle actually even hiring a bodyguard and claiming to be in fear for her life. Giselle also hired a bodyguard for their reunion set when Monique's black husband, Chris, dragged her on Twitter, but not when Candace's white husband, Chris, did the same. I have to admit, I'm not as knee-deep into the colorism allegations as most of the RHOP viewers seem to be. I personally believe that Giselle is just a miserable woman who goes after anyone with a seemingly better life than her, and especially a happy marriage. And that just so happens to be what all the dark-skinned women on the show have. Wendy, Candace, and Monique, at the time of filming anyway, all had loving husbands and were thriving financially in beautiful homes, while Giselle didn't even yet own a home and struggled to keep a man for more than a few months. So it's not hard to see why she would be envious of them and foaming at the mouth to tear them down, irrespective of their skin color. The light-skinned women on the show, on the other hand, are not in enviable relationships. Robin's roommate Juan clearly hates her and cheats on her. Ashley Darby married an old creep for survival who also cheated on her and humiliated her repeatedly, and Mia married an old man for survival as well and has a very sordid past of actually deviant behavior. These light-skinned women are also in weaker financial situations than the dark-skinned women. We all know about Juan and Robin's financial struggles. Michael didn't allow Ashley to spend much of his money, as evidenced by her Shein wardrobe and Kate Spade bag collection. And Mia and Gordon were renting homes in several states before their house of cards ultimately came tumbling down. There's quite literally nothing for Giselle to hate on and tear down with the light-skinned women, but there is everything for her to do that with when it comes to the dark-skinned women. On top of that, I gotta be real with you, it's really difficult for me to take Candace's allegations of colorism seriously when she is quite literally the most anti-Black cast member of all, in my opinion. She consistently uses dog whistle racist terms against Black women like ghetto, hood rat, and full-blown racist slurs like bedwench. The Real Housewives of Potomac tried and epically failed to address allegations of colorism on the show by leaving these women, who have all exhibited internalized racial biases, to debate the topics amongst themselves, as white male host Andy Cohen strangely overlooked the conversation, firmly planted in the middle like an overseer, as Candace Dillard would say. The usual excuses of, I can't be racist, I can't be colorist, my husband's dark, my kids are dark, were thrown around, and the conversation spun around in circles and circles and circles with no resolve. Anti-Blackness rears its head in many forms, including colorism, and I think that is the overarching problem with the Real Housewives of Potomac that must be addressed. It is something that each and every cast member has participated in at least once, and all should be made aware of moving forward in the ways in which they choose to speak to each other. These women are not only harming each other when they police each other's Blackness, throw around dog whistle racist terms, slurs, and perpetuate damaging caste systems and religious discrimination. They are harming Black people as a whole, and showing that it's not only acceptable to make such stigmatizing comments, but profitable. Before I wrap up this video, I want to remind you of one of the most vile, disgusting, and blatant forms of anti-Blackness displayed by any of the Real Housewives of Potomac. Giselle Bryant and Robin Dixon took to their podcast to accuse a Black basketball player named James Harden of hiding fried chicken, watermelon, Colt 45, and weed in his beard, which they also claimed looked filthy. They took every single racist trope against Black men and threw it at James Harden unprovoked. And to this day, I am stunned at the fact that they thought this was an appropriate conversation to even have, let alone air.
James Harden.
Yes.
Going from the Nets to the Sixers.
But do the Sixers really know that's James Harden? Because no one can see his face. Because that beard is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. The other day, I was like, who is this dude? Oh, this is Harden. But how would you know? That beard is like down to his knees. There's fried chicken in the beard.
You know what? It's so bad. I'm so used to it. I don't even notice it anymore.
But like that beard look is gone. Are we done with that?
I don't think so.
Listen, his is
clearly
horrible.
Not. Yeah. He clearly loves his beard.
He does. I want it to be gone.
I just hope it's sanitary, you know?
Anytime I see them, I automatically know and feel in my gut that there's fried chicken in those beards. Fried chicken, grease,
watermelon. Now
there's
you
some,
being racist?
There's some Colt 45 in there. Oh,
No,
watermelon.
now
Now I'm being real racist. Okay, this is horrible. Let me just stop while I'm ahead.
Colt 45.
James Harden, I beg of you.
It's definitely some blunts.
It's some blunts.
Some
Oh,
ashes.
it's the whole thing smells like weed. I know it does. Okay, I don't even know if he smokes weed. We're really sorry. Harden, cut the thing off.
Anyway, guys, that was my deep dive into the anti-Blackness on the Real Housewives of Potomac that has been perpetuated over the years. As usual, I really am looking forward to hearing what you have to say about everything, and if there were other instances of anti-Blackness that you noticed on the show that I might have overlooked. So please do make sure to leave all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.